And now, BX Forever presents another RPG deep dive.
Welcome back, adventurers. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Today, we're going old school. We're talking 1979, early days of Dungeons & Dragons. We're going to tackle a solo dungeon module. It's called Survival of the Fittest.
Ooh, survival.
Now we've got our trusty excerpts from the original module itself.
Of course.
And the Wikipedia entry. Gotta love Wikipedia.
It's a classic.
It's a classic. So, fair warning, folks. Some of this stuff might seem a little, dated.
Yeah.
Simplistic, even.
Part of the charm. We're time travelers today, seeing how these games evolved, you know?
It's about the evolution. Okay, so the big hook here, this survival of the fittest thing, it's meant to be a real challenge.
Oh.
Almost like
A final exam.
yeah, a final exam for your D&D characters.
For your character.
Push them to the limit, see what they're made of.
I like it. High stakes.
High stakes indeed. In fact, character death. That's the whole survival of the fittest theme.
Yeah.
It's meant to weed out the weaker characters.
Wow.
It was an alternative to just, erasing your character sheet.
Ah, I see. So instead of just
Poof, gone.
poof, gone.
This gave you a way to have that dramatic
A dramatic
demise.
the demise.
Yeah. I'm excited to dig into the mechanics,
Yes.
the encounters, all that good stuff. Get ready for some surprises.
Oh, I'm sure.
So first things first. Survival of the fittest. It was for solo play.
Solo? Interesting.
Which, back in 79, that was pretty cutting edge.
No dungeon master required.
No dungeon master. Just you, your character sheet,
Just you.
and a whole lot of dice.
Dice rolling galore.
Galore. Now, here's where it gets interesting. You've got all these different character classes, right? But a lot of them, they basically play like fighters. Like one little extra thing tacked on,
Like a bonus ability.
a bonus ability. For example, thieves, they get this bonus to hit
Okay.
and extra damage.
Ooh.
If they roll a 6 before attacking,
Interesting. So it's like
kind of random.
random, yeah. And situational.
Very situational. Then you've got monks. They get this chance to just dodge anything.
Really?
If they roll a 6,
So basic.
6 is your lucky number.
This is powerful.
Powerful 6. So what does this tell us about early D&D?
Well, it seems like they were still figuring out this whole class balance thing.
You can get it out.
The specialization, you know?
Yeah. The specializations, you can see like the seeds of what these classes would become.
The sieves, yeah?
But the mechanics, very, very simple.
Simple, right. Makes you appreciate.
Makes you appreciate how far we've come.
How far.
And speaking of limitations, the spell list. Super short.
Yeah. Limited magic.
Limited magic.
Aw.
In fact, the module actually says, and I quote,
Hit me with it?
any spells not listed will simply not work.
Wow.
Straightforward.
Straightforward.
Imagine being a wizard with like 5 spells.
Ooh, tough.
Uh,
So how do you think that impacted gameplay? I mean, you couldn't just rely on having the perfect spell for every situation, right?
Yeah.
Had to be more creative. Let's get to the good stuff.
the encounters.
The encounters. This module has some wild ones. We're talking everything from
Give me an
like,
example.
a mysterious elven weapons trader
Elven weapons trader, okay.
to a corridor literally labeled restroom
Restroom.
that leads straight to your doom.
Bad bathroom break.
Bad bathroom break. It's that classic old school dungeon crawl vibe. Danger around every corner. You never know
What's going to jump out?
what's going to jump out. But some of these encounters,
Yeah.
let's just say,
They're a product of their time.
they are a product of their time.
A little, maybe.
Little silly.
Yeah, maybe a little.
Okay, for example, there's this room full of vampiric cats.
Vampiric cats. Come on.
Vampiric cats? I
Yep.
love cats, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But vampiric cats, even for D&D,
That's out there. Out there. It's like one of those you had to be there moments
you had to beat
in
him.
gaming history. Maybe in 79 it was hilarious.
Maybe.
But today,
Raises an eyebrow.
raises an eyebrow. It's almost like the designer was just
Throwing everything at the wall.
seeing what sticks.
Classic.
But hey, that's part of the charm, right? These old modules, they weren't afraid to experiment.
To experiment.
Try weird stuff.
Sometimes those experiments,
Yeah.
they lead to big innovations.
Innovations.
Even if they look a little rough, you know.
Rough around the edge.
Around the edges, yeah.
Okay, so we've got simple mechanics, bizarre encounters, and a title that screams
Survival.
survival. What else makes this dungeon tick?
Tell me.
Well, the module is intentionally vague,
No map.
no clear map, just descriptions of room,
Okay.
corridors.
Gotcha.
You really got to use your imagination.
Visualize it.
Visualize it. So for some players, that's
Part of the fun.
part of the fun.
You're creating the dungeon
You're
as
creating
you go.
it, like a choose-your-own-adventure book.
Oh, I like that.
but with dice and
Nice.
character sheets.
But I can see how that could be frustrating for some
Oh, yeah.
who want more guidance.
More structure.
Structure, right.
So you're wandering through this vaguely defined dungeon,
Mm-hmm.
fighting off vampiric cats,
Right.
avoiding deadly restrooms.
Got it.
What's the goal?
Yeah, how do you escape this survival of the fittest thing?
How do you escape? Well, the final encounter,
Okay.
this is where things get interesting.
Oh.
You basically have to fight
Fight what?
a randomly determined monster
Randomly determined.
to escape. It could be anything.
Like what?
Giant spider, fire-breathing dragon.
Whoa. Talk about pressure.
Pressure. Like the dungeon throws this last curveball at you. Like
One final test.
one final test. Are you really worthy of surviving?
Worthy. Right.
Now, before we get to that final showdown,
Yeah.
maybe we should address the elephant in the room.
The elephant, you mean?
Well, besides the vampiric
Besides
cats.
the cats, yeah.
Looking back on survival of the fittest now,
Mm-hmm.
with our modern eyes,
Yeah,
some of the design choices, the content
Yeah.
haven't aged well.
that's fair.
Some of the encounters, as we've said, are a little
Silly. Immature, maybe.
immature. Yeah, we got to acknowledge that.
Right.
We could appreciate its historical significance,
Of course.
the impact it had.
Yeah.
But we also got to recognize that it reflects
The times.
the times. And those times, they weren't always
Aligned with our values today.
aligned. Exactly. We're not here to, like, condone
Right.
or excuse anything.
Of course not.
That might be problematic. We're here to explore it.
Analyze
Maybe even
it.
have a few laughs.
Lex, absolutely.
Because sometimes the best way to deal with something
Yeah.
that's a little cringy,
Cringy.
is to just embrace the absurdity.
Embrace the absurdity.
So with all that in mind,
Mhm.
ready to delve deeper.
Let's do it.
I'm curious about those class abilities,
Me too.
how they actually work.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we can brainstorm some strategies for dealing with
The cats.
those vampiric cats.
Oh, yeah, we got to be prepared.
Always be prepared.
Right.
Okay, folks, we're going even deeper into the world of survival of the fittest.
Buckle up.
Stay tuned.
So those class abilities you mentioned.
Like, how do they actually play out?
Right. So a lot of them, as you said, function like a fighter, but with
Uh-huh.
a twist. It's cool to see, like the early game designers,
Yeah.
they're experimenting, you know?
Experimenting with play style.
Play styles, yeah. Like, take the cleric, for example.
Okay, cleric.
They've got this turn undead ability.
Right, classic cleric.
Classic, even today, right? Try and scare off those undead nasties.
So they're capturing the essence of each class,
Essence, exactly.
even if, like,
The mechanics are
mechanics are kind of
basic.
basic. So I imagine back then, with those early attempts at class balance,
Oh, yeah.
you'd have some
Some interesting results.
interesting results.
Yeah.
A party of adventurers, each with their own
Quirky abilities.
quirky ability.
That's been fun to watch.
Fun to watch. Speaking of things that are interesting to see,
Yeah,
this module has some strange encounters.
it does.
We talked about the vampiric cats,
Right.
but there's also this evil high priest
Okay.
named Zodak,
Zodak. Okay.
and he offers you a chance.
What? To like repent.
No, to donate treasure
Donate treasure.
for a blessing.
A blessing from an evil high priest.
Evil high priest, and if you give him enough,
Yeah.
he heals you.
What? That's not very
They're
evil.
Subverting expectations, right?
It is. You go in thinking, evil high priest, fight.
Yeah.
But there's this
Negotiation
negotiation.
adds that layer of, like, depth.
It's like the designer saying, hey, think outside the box.
Right. It doesn't always have to be about fighting.
Yeah.
Maybe you can talk your way out.
Right. Or bribe him.
Bribe him. A well-placed bribe.
Well-placed bribe.
Yeah.
Valuable lesson for D&D in life.
That it is. But sometimes you just got to
Roll the dice.
roll the dice.
And that's where the random encounters come in.
Oh, yeah, this module's full of them.
Every corner you turn.
You never know. Goblins, giant rats,
Ooh, or a mimic
the mimics. That's
disguised as a treasure chest.
classic. Mimics get you every time.
They do. Get you when you're least expecting it.
Speaking of treasure.
Yes. Every good dungeon needs loot.
Loot. Gotta have loot. But remember those limited spells? The
Mhm.
module, it says you can only bring one magic item.
One into the whole dungeon.
The whole dungeon.
So you got to
You gotta
choose,
choose.
like,
Better weapon, better
or
armor.
a potion.
Potion. A life-saving potion. Or maybe a scroll with a couple spells on it.
That's tough. It makes you think about,
Priorities.
Mhm.
What's going to save your butt in a tight spot?
right, a little offense, some defense.
Little magic.
Magic. It's like the ultimate packing list for a dungeon delve.
Ultimate packing list. All right, put yourself in those shoes. Low-level fighter. Going into this death trap of a dungeon, what magic item are you taking?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I think potion of healing.
Potion of healing. Gotta have those hit points.
Gotta have those hit points. So potion's gone, you're low on hit points,
Mm-hmm.
you stumble into a room full of skeletons.
Oh!
What do you do? Is there even hope?
Well, luckily, there are a few chances for healing.
Okay.
Spell recovery,
Like that wishing well.
the wishing well,
You toss a coin in, make a wish,
hope for the best,
total gamble. But hey, sometimes you gotta
take those risks.
take risks in a dungeon designed to kill you. But I'm still wondering,
What's the point of it all?
yeah, what's the point? Is it just surviving as long as possible?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it brings us to the controversial point about this module,
Which is
its intended character loss rate.
character loss rate. You mean like,
How many characters are expected to die
Well,
playing this thing?
okay,
The module actually says players should aim for at least a 50% character loss rate.
wait, 50%? That means, like, that seems a bit
Harsh.
harsh.
Yeah.
Even for survival of the fittest?
It reflects a different way of thinking back then, you know,
About character death.
about character death. It was more like part of the game,
A natural part of the risk.
part of the risk.
So it's not about winning or losing.
No.
It's about
Embracing the possibility of failure,
of losing your character.
losing your character and starting
like,
over.
accepting that death.
It's part of life.
Part of life, even in D&D.
And maybe it makes the wins even sweeter.
The wins are sweeter. It's a different way of thinking, that's for sure.
It is. It really challenges like how we think about characters today.
We get attached.
Attached, right?
But I like the idea that death isn't the end.
Yeah.
It can be a new beginning.
New beginnings, new story.
New stories. All right, let's bring it back to the module itself.
Okay.
We've talked mechanics, encounters, loot, philosophy, even character death.
Mm-hmm.
But there's one more thing. The legacy.
The legacy, right. How did survival of the fittest change things?
Did it influence game design in D&D and beyond?
Because it might seem simple,
Rough.
but it clearly had an impact, right? We're talking about it now.
Almost 50 years later.
50 years. That says something.
So what do you think? What's its legacy?
Well, you can see the roots of solo RPGs,
Okay.
those roguelike video games.
5 likes, yeah.
Even modern tabletop games that really lean into challenge.
That difficulty.
Difficulty, that unpredictable.
Unpredictability.
Permadeath, random encounters, player choices mattering.
All that came from.
You can trace it back to survival of the fittest.
Wow. So maybe it wasn't the most polished D&D module,
No.
but it was a significant one.
Absolutely. It shows that even simple ideas, quirky ideas, they can have a big impact.
A big impact. But one thing still bothers me.
What's that?
That high character loss rate.
Yeah, 50% is a lot.
It is a lot. I get the risk, the consequence, but
But a lot for modern players to handle.
we're so used to our characters being like
A companion.
companions, part of us for the long haul.
But back then, different mentality.
Different mentality. The characters were more like,
Tools.
yeah, expendable, this
Well,
big
adventure.
adventure. It's like the characters themselves
Weren't the point.
weren't the point. It was about
The experience.
the experience, the challenge, the story.
The story. No matter who survives.
So you're pushing your limits, testing your luck, and seeing
How far you can go.
how far you can go before
Say catches you.
fate catches you. It's fascinating, even if I don't totally
I
agree.
get it.
I like my characters.
But it shows death doesn't have to be the end.
It can be a start,
A start of something new.
a new story. It's like embracing that cycle
Of creation.
of destruction,
Even in a game.
even in a game.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to the legacy.
Survival of the fittest, right? Maybe not a module for everyone.
Yeah.
Maybe not the most balanced.
Definitely left its mark, though.
It did. It shows innovation. It can come from anywhere.
Anywhere.
People willing to try new things, even if they seem
Strange.
strange, silly, whatever.
And those strange, silly things sometimes
They teach us the best lessons,
the best lessons. Maybe hidden in some dusty old module,
tucked away on a shelf.
waiting to be rediscovered. So if you're looking for
A glimpse into early D&D,
old school, anything goes.
survival of the fittest, might be worth checking out.
Just watch out for those
Vampiric cats.
vampiric cats.
Yeah.
And maybe have a backup character sheet ready.
Always good to have a backup.
All right, final part of our survival of the fittest deep dive.
Yeah.
We've gone through the nitty-gritty, the classes, the encounters, that
Intriguing.
intriguing dungeon layout.
Mhm.
But now I want to talk big picture.
Okay.
What's the overall feeling this module leaves you with?
It's a mixed bag for sure.
It is.
On one hand, you see the roots of so much of modern D&D,
Yeah.
Those early mechanics, the seeds of the classes we know,
The seeds.
and solo play, that was ahead of its time, really.
Way ahead of its time. But then there's
Stuff that,
stuff that just feels
well, a little
rough around the edges.
rough around the edges, like those
Vampiric cat.
vampiric cats. Today, kind of funny, right?
Definitely more funny than scary.
But back then,
Who knows? Maybe players were terrified.
maybe. That's all about context, right?
Context is everything.
What was cutting-edge game design in 79?
Might seem goofy now.
Yeah.
But that's what makes these old modules so
Interesting.
interesting. A window into a different time.
A time capsule of gaming.
A time capsule.
Yeah.
Like an archaeological dig almost.
Oh, I like that.
Digging up these artifacts.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how they fit into
Fury picture.
the evolution of D&D. And some of those artifacts, well,
They're going to be dusty.
they're going to be dusty. But still valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the influence on solo RPGs, even video games.
Huge influence.
That whole permadeath thing.
Yeah.
Random encounters popping up.
Player choices actually mattering.
Choices mattering. That all goes back to
We can trace it back.
survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest. Amazing.
Amazing. But there's still this one thing. It's bugging me.
What's that?
That character loss rate.
50%. Yeah, it's a lot.
It is a lot.
Mm.
I get the whole, embracing the risk,
The consequence.
the consequences, but 50% just seems
Extreme.
extreme. Modern players, we're so used to
Our character.
our characters being like
Long term.
our buddies. We
Yeah.
go on adventures together.
Yeah.
But back then, totally different.
Different mindset.
Different mindset. Characters were more like
Disposable.
disposable tools of the trade.
Expendable.
Yeah, serving this greater,
Grand adventure.
the grand adventure. Almost like the characters themselves
Want the focus.
weren't the focus. It was the
journey.
journey, the challenge, the story that came out of it.
No matter who lived or died.
Exactly. So it's like pushing yourself
Seeing how far you can go.
before fate
Where-
steps in.
That's a cool way to look at it.
It is. Doesn't mean I totally buy it.
I still like my characters. Embracing that cycle, creation, destruction, even in a game.
Even in a game. And that brings us back full circle.
To the legacy.
Survival of the fittest. A flawed module, sure,
Oh, yeah.
but it changed things. It did. It shows that innovation, it can come from the weirdest places.
the most unexpected corners.
People who are willing to just
Try stuff?
try stuff, even if it seems silly,
Or even dumb.
later on, right?
Yeah, looking back. But those weird ideas, sometimes,
They teach us the most
valuable lessons.
valuable lessons hidden in those dusty old modules,
On a forgotten shelf.
just waiting for someone to pick them up.
Oh.
So if you're ever feeling
Or
nostalgic,
you want to see where it all began.
survival of the fittest, give it a look.
Just be ready for those.
Vampiric cats,
Always the cats.
Yeah.
And maybe have a backup character sheet ready.
sound advice. Well, folks, that wraps up our Survival of the Fittest deep dive. Hope you enjoyed this little trip back in time,
It was a fun one.
and that it maybe gave you a new way to think about
How games have changed.
how games have changed. Until next time, keep exploring, keep playing, and keep those dice rolling.